You are listening to Mining Stock Education, where you'll learn from the top leaders in the natural resource sector and uncover quality mining investment opportunities.
It's Bill Powers, and this is Mining Stock Education. Thanks for tuning back in. We're getting an update from Prospera Energy, a company that I'm invested in. We're speaking today with Samuel David. He's the president and CEO of the company, as well as the VP of Subsurface, George Magarian. Gentlemen, welcome on to the show. We're in the midst of a drill program. And Sam, could you provide kind of an operational update? You announced the program. The drills have been out there for weeks now. Where are we at in the context of this program, please?
Certainly. And glad to see you again, Bill. Prospera is in the midst of our development drilling program that was announced earlier. As mentioned before, 4 horizontal has been completed thus far. We're right on the 5th horizontal. As I got my update today, we're just approaching ICP, intermediate casing point, just prior to drilling out the lateral part of this well. So thus far, Prospera's horizontals have encountered structure and pay, and oil shows as expected. The expectation was low. It's low risk infill drilling. We're drilling in between verticals, and we have 3D seismic that has delineated. And most of all, so the risk is all mechanical, if anything, because we got years of oil production from adjacent vertical wells, and 3D, there's well control, there's 3D seismic that defines the structure and the path of the lateral. And we have a very good geophysicist, one of the best in the industry, that's been delineating our 3D seismic. And George, my longtime friend, VP of Subsurface, has delineated all of these fields to the nth degree. So the risk lies in the mechanical, the execution of drilling the well. And we tweak any anomalies by drilling pilot wells, and we encountered things that we didn't expect, which was great because now we have tweaked all of those. That enabled this development program to be executed smoothly. And actually, there's good synergy with a drilling contractor, Lasso. There's good synergy with the entire team, and I have drilled these wells efficiently and ahead of schedule. Currently, we're drilling this next 4-well multi-pad wells program right now. We've already drilled 4. The next 4 is in progress. And the first 4, because they're on an existing well site and all the infrastructure is in place, the first 2 well from the pad is already completed and being tied in right now. And the next 2 well, the service rig gets off there. It will be also completed and tied in. But the entire pool is shut in right now. And as soon as we get off this well that we're drilling right now, the lateral pay, the entire pool will be online. And these wells will be online immediately, I would say within the next week or 2. Within the next week, I think, George.
Within the next week for the first 2, and then the week after for the second 2.
Yeah, and then the 5th one.
Yeah.
So 5 wells should be coming on within a couple of weeks here.
And George, when will investors get to see the flow test results?
Well, we should expect to see results next week for 2 of the wells, and the following week for the number 3 and number 4 well.
I just like to clarify a little further on George's. It'll be online.
It'll be online.
Yeah, online. But however, in the first week or so, we'll be unloading the load fluid that was used to drill the well. So the actual oil starts flowing a week after. So realistically, we can't just go in 1 or 2 days and say, "Hey, we encountered all this pay and all this. This is what it's going to be." This is heavy oil. We have to bring it on slowly. And gently, and we have to have a low drawdown on the reservoir to establish a flow path. If we pull on it too hard, you're going to pull the sand, you're going to pull the water, it's just going to mess it up. We have to be patient. It's got to be IP 30, IP 30 days, IP 60 days, IP 90 days. But, there's a lot of wells in this, it's a legacy pool, the flow path and the deliverability has been established. These vertical wells have IP 200 barrels a day, etc. But that was at the initial stages of the pool. It was at a virgin pressure. Now it's been depleted, but it also been pressurized. but at random disposal. It wasn't a very well-planned pattern flood the pressure support. But we do have reservoir management in consideration. Subsequent, while we're drilling this, these are all planned properly. So I would say, initially we'll get lower flow rates because we're trying to establish we're not running the pump at high RPM and high efficiency and pulling out it hard. That's the wrong thing to do with heavy oil reservoir. That's not a good reservoir management. But over 60 days and 90 days, we'll establish a steady, pseudo-steady state flow deliverability for these horizontals.
And then is the plan still to test a polymer flood, potentially even on this initial pool that you're drilling?
Okay, polymer is something that everybody jumps onto, but I like to call it improved recovery and enhanced recovery. And every pool is in a different type of reservoir parameters, reservoir conditions, different fluid properties. And you can't just jump on polymer alone. Polymer is one of the enhanced recovery item that we could consider, but there are many other ways we can also prep it and minimize those polymer costs. What we want to discuss is a viscosified fluid that generates a better swoop efficiency in these reservoirs, but all three reservoirs are not exactly the same. They're three different type of reservoirs and three different, even a little bit of variation in viscosity and density of the oil. And, the makeup of the reservoir are a little different. And because these are legacy fields, we study the connectivity, we study the flow, the sand production that's created some wormholes and things like that. So there's a lot of things goes into it. So to answer your question, not just polymer, we're considering the appropriate agent that is conducive to that fluid and reservoir conditions.
So Aduro, that partnership perhaps will be a part of this first pool of production?
Aduro is not part of the enhanced improved recovery. Aduro is a surface after we produce the oil that it moves the heavy ends into a light end that increases our API and get a better pricing and better margin for it. So that's more at the subsurface. It has nothing to do with the reservoir improved recovery or enhanced recovery.
Yes, I understand that. What I meant was the produced oil from this pool, will you use that in partnership with Aduro to do your initial pilot test?
Yes, you're correct, Bill. The samples are being analyzed and down east in Toronto. As a matter of fact, next month we'll be taking a trip to the lab to see the status of it, and we're anticipating a full report of the enhancement of the heavy oil by end of this year, in January of next year, full report.
So Sam, as you know, I stand on the investor side of the table. You're on the other side of the table. When I look at your share chart, I'm saying to myself, the shares are looking for a reason to break out, but there's a little doubt there. And it's like, give me some evidence. What can I expect? Can I expect future success? So when I'm asking questions about the pilot program and the success of the first modular, I know that these are what investors are thinking. Your response, your thoughts to my comments?
Well, I'm also on the other side too, because I also invested in Prospera. I believe in Prospera, and I'll continue to invest in Prospera because I think there is tremendous success to be had. There's a lot of oil in place, and we have turned this company around to a stable operating conditions right now. We have free cash flow. We have piloted horizontals, and now we're executing the drilling program. These things, barring from weather, there's weather conditions, there's permit conditions, there's landowner acceptance, and as a small company with limited resources, we have been jumping through those hoops, and we're trying to be timely as much as possible within the capability. And in my opinion, Prospera has been executing, and it's inevitable. You are right. This is, there's a breakthrough here coming up, and this development program and strategic acquisitions that we have lined up is going to really enhance Prospera's position as a company.
So you also will be drilling vertical wells into medium and light oil at a different project after you're done with these horizontals. Can you give us an update on that? When should investors expect the drills to be turning?
it doesn't have to be subsequent to the horizontal well. It's a different rig in a different location. We're still waiting on permits on some of the location. We got permits and everything ready to go in part of the field. And the other part, we're just near permit. And the reason being, when we bring out a rig, you can't do 1 off or 2 off or 3 off. We want to execute that full 8 or 10 well program that we're planning to, and we have a rig tied up with the same drilling contractor, and it's subsequent to or somewhere thereabout. I'm hoping towards the end of this month or early part of next month. These wells, they're about 1,000 meters, less than 1,000 meters. They're directional wells, and they're a multi-well pad. So it's in the same pad that we're drilling from, and they're only 3 to 5 days. So it'd be fairly quick. And we have the full, these are new leases, so we have to construct the lease, and we have to install all the surface equipment and flow piping, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of permit, a lot of work has been done over the last 6 months, from engineering, procurement to, transfer of equipment and instrumentation, electrical, mechanical, construction. We're the last bit. And once we drill, they installed. So we're still expecting to hit that target and that production as anticipated. Prospera team is working hard and diligently, as much as we can.
George, what are your expectations on a barrel per day basis per well for the medium to light oil drilling at Brooks?
Well, you should see those wells come on at, and they will be flowing to surface. We won't even need a pump on these wells to begin with, but the expectation is somewhere in the 100 to 200, 300 barrels a day flowing to surface. That will last, who knows, maybe 1 month, maybe 2 months, and then it'll need a pump. So it'll start off at those hundreds of barrels a day, come down as the pressure depletes a little bit, and then we'll need the pumps. So, to sustain a rate of somewhere between 100, 150 barrels a day with the pump, I don't think is too far-fetched based on what we've seen in our two completions. And then we should have a steady, low decline rate oil well. And we say that based on all the data that we've taken from producing wells in the area from that formation, which I had a hand in 20 years ago. So a lot of those wells that were drilled 20 years ago to the east of us, I was involved with.
And what did they produce on average?
They came on at those hundreds of barrels a day. I mean, not every well, but the majority of them. When you have your reservoir, you get those hundreds of barrels a day to start off with. And then they decline and you need the pump.
When we study these, we study all the nearby wells. We studied something like 421 wells in that area. And we have segregated into different type of wells that was drilled: slanted wells, vertical wells, horizontal wells, and what they delivered, and the total recovery. So we come up with a type curve for the type of wells that we're drilling. And these are average. Some are higher, some are, if you look at the bandwidth of all the wells that's drilled, they go like this, and we put a type curve as a middle well. And average, they came on around 65, 70 barrels a day, IP, and they recovered around 65, 70,000 on a primary depletion without pressure support. But Prospera always thinks of reservoir management, not until the primary depletion is completed, but we'll start the reservoir management within a year of the pool depletion commenced. So our decline would be less and the recovery would be higher. But IP, initial production, is something you can't push or change because that's the deliverability of the rock and the pressure. These wells that we tested, they tested better than the average. So we're thinking these are better than the average wells.
George, in this formation, there are some wells that produce 600,000 barrels per day. So what differentiates those high producers from your expectations here?
Well, if you're looking at wells that, or people are looking at press releases of wells from this formation that are at 600 barrels a day, I guarantee you that those are horizontal wells. So people are going horizontal in this formation. We necessarily can't do that right now because we're still developing the pool. We're identifying the pool, the size of the pool. Those horizontals are being drilled within pool boundaries, which Prospera is doing in their Saskatchewan properties. So any press releases related to 600 barrels a day in a Pekisco well is a horizontal well.
I also like to further clarify, in this area, the horizontals, well, you have to really clarify what is 600,000 barrels a day, because it's not the first one-day test or the first flowing pressure. You should really look at IP30, IP60, and IP90 for initial production. And if you look at that, I'm almost certain you won't get 600,000 barrels a day. It's a good 600
barrels per day, not 600,000. Yeah. But
no, 600 or 1,000 barrels.
To 1,000.
600 to 1,000 barrels a day. But, I can see 600 barrels because one of our vertical wells tested at 300 barrels a day flowing. But we don't hold that. That's initial flush production, and eventually it'll come down. I like to use IP30, IP60, IP90.
And Samuel, you have a 50% working interest. Prospera has 50% working interest in the Brooks property we're talking about. You vended this project into the company, so you still have at least partial ownership of the other 50% working interest. I had a question come in from a listener. The essence of the question was, can Samuel profit off of this project if shareholders of Prospera don't? Could you address that, please?
Sure, certainly, and I'll be glad to clarify. So this Brooks property that George and I are talking about, actually, we were delineating this and acquired these properties. We were embarking on as a company independent of prior to Prospera. So that was our core project. And we worked on it 2 or 3 years delineating this property, and we acquired those wells and lands prior to joining Prospera. And when I came on only as an advisor, then I was appointed as a CEO before I even knew about it. A friend of mine congratulated me. And the board and principal investors, I was transparent as I was what I was doing, that I have a company, and we've been active as a producer. The principal investors and the board requested that my focus is primarily on focus is primarily on Prospera. Therefore, they requested me to vend anything I have into Prospera at equal percentage, so there's no bias that I might benefit a little bit more, or I might focus on a property because I have a higher working interest. And I was glad to do that, but these wells tested a lot higher than I expected. But it's good for Prospera, and it's good for myself as well, because I rented our property into this. The other thing is Sam or the Sam's companies does not benefit anything better than or an advantage is to benefit from these deals, because it's only on a proven basis. There is no monetary exchange yet, and so it is all above board. It was vetted by a third party, technically, by a third party reserve evaluator. It was vetted by the board, who's also technical. Brian McConnell has done reserves for many years, and all other board members. They approved it. TSX reviewed the whole entire deal, and they approved it. And also, one of the principal investor had his own group of individuals individually assessed it, and they also approved it and said this is good for the company. And it is good for Prospera because it gives us the lighter oil product mix that Prospera is much needed because we're heavy oil dependent. I hope that helps to clarify.
It does, and my understanding was too that you haven't received any cash from Prospera. Basically, you'll get payment in shares if this is successful. Is that a good summarization also?
Majority, yes, mostly. There are wells that are proven production thus far that had a cash value, but I didn't receive cash. We just kept it into the books and carry on. So it's all above board, and it went through the entire process of approval.
Thank you for clarifying that. Sam, any final words as we conclude here? I know you got a lot of work to do today.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's inevitable there's a Prospera breakthrough, and Prospera is working hard to ensure of that.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Sam, and thank you, George, for this update.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.